Welcome to another episode of Did You Know? I'm Heather Farley, the TSA Historian.
And I'm Caroline Argrave, the archivist. Today, we're in the TSA Visitor Center, which we thought was a great place to start this episode. Behind me are 3 monitors that feature the 3 generations of our TSO uniform.
When TSA was created in 2001, it was the largest mobilization of the civilian federal government since World War II. Equipping the then called federal screeners was no easy feat. Over 50,000 people were hired that first year, and they all required uniforms and training.
TSA decided it was best to go with an off-the-rack solution and make upgrades and changes later. So let's take a look at what they chose.
We're here today to talk about our most iconic TSO, Transportation Security Officer uniform, the most recognizable members of our workforce at screening checkpoints at airports across the nation. There have been significant changes to the uniform over the last 20 years of TSA's history, and we'll start today by talking about the prototype shirts on the table in front of us. So while we were testing off-the-shelf options for our first uniform to deploy in the field, we were testing how the shirt should look, what the fabric would be made out of. You can see that the badges were sewn directly onto the sleeves. This one is embroidered directly onto the sleeve, and the embroidery to identify TSA from the rear so that you'd be identifiable from the front and the back. We very quickly knew that we would need to do some significant upgrades to that first prototype uniform. So our first uniform was a white shirt. We had the DOT badge, an embroidered shield, burgundy necktie, and a burgundy vest. And it only came in a male pattern, so it was not particularly comfortable for a significant number of our workforce.
The biggest change for their second generation uniform was the movement of the DOT seal to the DHS seal and enhancing the embroidered badge on the white shirts. The other improvement was adding law enforcement style shoulder boards to all screener uniforms.
So from 2001 to 2005, federal screeners were called screeners. And in 2005, we renamed them to Federal Transportation Security Officers, giving them that air of Transportation Security Authority and really giving them the role that they serve in our communities.
So our third generation uniforms, which you see right behind us, was a total overhaul of the previous 2 in both cut and color and fabric. The biggest change being that the workforce were issued actual badges that bore the weight of their authority as federal officers.
This was such a critical update to our uniform because we really worked with the uniformed members of our workforce to hear what they would like to wear, what they identified with, what their workplace culture was, and we listened to them to make the changes to get to this third generation uniform. So again, many changes, really showing how TSA can quickly evolve when we know that we have something that's not quite right, and we fix it on the spot and move on to a better version. Next up, we're going to hear from members of the workforce who actually wore these uniforms over the years through the first generation, second generation, and third. And we're also going to have interviews with some of our historian staff to talk about checkpoint equipment. Now I'm joined with Amber Darby, our associate historian, and we have our Garrett hand wand. It's a handheld metal detector. Can you tell us a little bit about this artifact?
No problem. So this is the Garrett Super Wand metal detector. It was used by the TSA as one of their many handheld metal detectors. So what they would do, they would have the individual stand exactly as you are doing, and then from there, the TSOs, they would wave the wand around in a constant motion. The wand would begin emanating a 360-degree magnetic field. Any form of metal or stainless steel that was on said person, it would begin to interact with the field, and the detector would respond with these tonal alerts, the LED lights, or the detector itself would begin to vibrate. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for sharing this artifact with us.
Likewise.
I'm Ethan with the TSA Historians, and with me today is Charles, the model of the Generation 3 uniforms.
So I'm Charles Williams. I'm with Physical Security. I've been with TSA since 2002, since the beginning. In 2007, I was working as a program analyst when I got a call from TSA headquarters about a project that was going on and that I needed to bring TSOs from Reagan National Airport over to headquarters that were of certain dimensions. And they gave me shirt sizes and pant sizes. And when we opened up the uniforms, the uniform shirt was a short sleeve shirt. And this was important because the individual that they wanted to be the model had sleeve tattoos. And for the photos, they didn't want the sleeve tattoos. And they eyed me up. They looked at me and they said, "What size shirt do you wear?" And turns out that I wore that exact shirt, and took us down to the lobby of TSA headquarters where the NAC was meeting there along with the administrator. And I walked out and we did a photo shoot. It just added a professionalism to the way they look, to the way they presented themselves, and it gave a sense of authority, which is what we were trying to do to change the image of the TSO from a screener to a professional officer.
Thank you for coming. Really enjoyed your time. And
Fun sharing my story.
yeah. With me today is Justin.
I'm a regional desk officer with international operations now. I started back in 2002 as part of the mobile screening force. Opened JFK Airport, Manchester, New Hampshire, Buffalo, New York, and then finally went home to Tucson, my home airport, once it was ready in early October. Well, I know a lot of folks didn't enjoy the first uniforms. They didn't particularly care for the color, they didn't care for the materials. I was less concerned about that. What it meant to me to wear that uniform is that I stood there with some 14,000 people across the country wearing that uniform as a member of the mobile screening force. There was a certain kind of authority and capability and a sense of relief when you dealt with air carriers, when you dealt with passengers. They could instantly recognize that we were now improving security at their airport. And you could tell that they actually felt better about getting on those aircraft. One of the enhancements that I enjoyed the most was the inclusion of these seams that were designed directly into the shirt. What that did is when the person's wearing it, especially if you got a little bit of extra around this middle like I do, it draped better, it felt better. And when you looked at yourself in the uniform, when you looked in the mirror and saw it, it just looked sharp. You truly felt like you were a federal officer now with that shield, standing there carrying out that mission.
Thank you for coming in and sharing your stories.
You know what? Thank you, Ethan, for the opportunity to come in and reminisce and bring back some old memories. So thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Did You Know? Please reach out to the TSA Historian if you have any historic materials that you could donate to our TSA Heritage Asset Collection and TSA Archive. Thanks again, and see you next time.